taking a deeper look at the Star Trek Gene Roddenberry Star Trek universe. Now, this is Utopia as therapy. Roddenberry's future is not just speculative science fiction, it's therapy on this galactic scale. Now, in the 1960s, the world was buckling under the weight of Cold War paranoia, massive racism, and looming nuclear annihilation. Roddenberry's solution was to write humanity a prescription, an image of the world that we had evolved past scarcity, tribalism, and ego-driven wars. And from a psychological standpoint, this is a classic compensatory fantasy. Its humanity is traumatized by its own failures, and it dreams up a future where those wounds specifically never exist. So instead of like therapy couches, we get the captain's ready room. Instead of talk therapy, we get interstellar diplomacy. We work things out in real time on this show. And the Federation itself serves as the id, like the entire human id. It's rational, it's measured, it's constantly mediating between the extremes. Its laws, the Prime Directive, and its moral code create the structure that keeps chaos in check. Now, the id shows up as rogue captains, wars, or temptations of power. The superego surfaces in this utopian rhetoric, this strict adherence to non-interference, and this moral superiority that comes along with it. Now, the ego, of course, is Federation Starfleet, which walks the line between all of them, adjusting when principles clash with instincts or survival. And this mirrors the psychological balancing act that's within every person. Star Trek just externalizes it in a galactic scale. That's why it's so powerful to a lot of people. Now, the aliens on this show personify all of our repressed instincts, and they're pretty easy to see if you look at them, right? The Klingons are violence and honor. They're the warrior instinct, the bloodlust, the thrill of battle that we pretend to have evolved past. But humans insist that they're rational, but the Klingons prove that aggression never dies. It just gets a ridge forehead. Then you have the Vulcans, who are all about logic and repression. And this shows what happens when we kind of bury our feelings. The price of hyper-rationality is suppressed rage, and it leaks out through some of their rituals. So we see that. And then we see the ferengi, who, this is capitalism that they kind of, make a parody out of. But it's post-scarcity federation. They just remind us what happens when acquisition and profits rule unchecked. Now, the Borg represent like a very interesting psyche, because this is about conformity and dehumanization. It's the darkest projection that we see, the fear of losing our own individuality, and they exemplify that. They are a nightmare of collectivism without compassion. It's technology without any humanity. So they strip us of the things that we think are core to us, which is why the Borg are really seen as, the existential threat. They're on a whole nother level of threat. The Romulans, they represent mistrust and secrecy. So this is like Cold War paranoia, the time when the show was actually born. And so that's why it's always been so prominent. This is the shadow of suspicion. It's always lurking out there. We can never trust these guys. So every human contact in this series is humanity arguing with our own shadows. It's playing it out in these, allegories that are very complex, right? This is, some pretty deep level stuff that they're showing. And he goes even further, because we look at the captains themselves have all been very, very different. The most prominent captains. My OG, Kirk, is the adventurer. He's the id. This is a libido-driven hero. He's, charismatic. He's reckless. He's always testing boundaries. But he embodies that idea of passion and risk. He's all about that, right? Picard is the philosopher. He's more super ego. This is the thinking man's captain. He, is forever weighing morality, diplomacy, and principle. His restraint and reason in human form. He's the embodiment of all those things. How he stays that man is amazing, okay? Then we got Sisko, who is the father. He's both a commander and a prophet, and he wrestles with morality, faith, and his own legacy. And he represents the painful process of the individual, accepting all parts of your psyche, the dark and the good. Now, Janeway is very different in the sense that she shows more of the ego under pressure. She's the ultimate caregiver. Isolated in that Delta Quadrant, she embodies resilience, balance, and protective instincts of this leadership that is under duress. Now, Archer gets to be more just explorer, pure childlike, just naive but always optimistic. This embodies humanity's early developmental stages. Curiosity, we're eager, but we're stumbling forward. And each captain is kind of like a different mass. This takes the audience through different types of humans evolving their own consciousness under these various situations. And that's what kind of brings it to light. Now, the technology is like very, very specific. It's very symbolic of humans kind of sublimating our primal urges. The phasers are aggression controlled. It's violence that's measured, right? That's the key thing about them. And a lot of sci-fis don't have that. Their transporters allow them to escape boundaries, to transcend the limitations of the body. The holodeck, man, this is all about it right here. This is a key thing that they recognize here is its fulfillment without consequences, right? Although it seems like the consequences do kind of show up, but the idea is that you can go on the holodeck, you can get it all out. So the fact that they still encompass that part of humans, I think is huge. And the warp drive is libido's restless hunger to move forward, like to break limits. That's pure like libido right there. So they play their technology even plays into the psychology of it. Right, like the Prime Directive, of course, is like the super ego. This is straight morality, like wrapping it up. Thou shalt not mean laws. Thou shalt not do this laws. Meant to curb our impulses to dominate or to interfere. The crazy part about that is that it's always being broken. So this is really on display, like humanity's relationship with its own morality internally. Setting up these rigid rules to keep ourselves civilized, but knowing in the real world it's messy. And the superego can't fully control the id, so the Prime Directive will never fully, hold back all these various compassions or like instincts and curiosity. Roddenberry himself obviously really thought all this stuff out, but his own psyche kind of bleeds into it as well. This is a man who served as a pilot in World War II. He lived during a time of a lot of social upheaval. He worked in Hollywood, and clearly he longed for progress himself. But even within that, he dragged some of his own bias, which I don't hold against him. This is humanity on display. He insists on this gender equality, but his scripts tend to lead towards a lot of sexualizations. Like our first introductions, obviously, was Kirk and his attitudes. And I loved every minute of it, but we have to remember how early Starfleet women dress. Right? They got away from that, but early on, it was pretty deep. He also really promoted racial inclusion. Like Uhura being on the bridge was groundbreaking, but then those same characters kind of get sidelined. They're kind of props, so they don't fully get developed. But I am aware that he's conscious of that they need to be here. So this is again like it's mirroring his ideologies and wanting to move to this utopia, but still stumbling in the process, which is very human. And I think this is why Star Trek itself has resonated for so long, because it's so much of us within all these different conflicts, and we see ourselves struggling with the decisions that the captains have to make in our relationships with these various entities, the weaponry. It is a lot of human expression and things that we aspire to be. Star Trek is an aspirational story. This is what we hope to evolve to being, but we do have to answer the questions of what we leave behind, because they recognize that you need holodecks because their world kind of squeezes the individual, like in a lot of ways it really does. It's not as wild, it's not as off the hook as a lot of worlds that we see. It's fictional worlds, but just a lot of mythology and symbolism, just dripping throughout what the Roddenberry Star Trek universe is. If you have more thoughts on it, please drop in the comment section. As always, give me insights on other species or people that we want to break down and really get into the mind of.